Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm BREE MESQUIT and I am the founder and owner of Lash and Wax OC and the creator of Rebel Wax. Today I'm doing a men's full back wax demo for you guys using our Rebel Wax 50-50 blend of our pink shimmer and blue gummy pre-mix. So let's get started. The first step is we're going to pre-cleanse and pre-oil. So I'm using Clean Sweep by Relax and Wax. That's my favorite cleanser. I've been using it for years. We really want to saturate the cotton rounds pretty well with this. I do like to transfer the cleanser into a spray bottle, it just makes it a little bit easier. All right, so I like to use 2 at a time. We're gonna start up top here, work our way over, making sure we're being super thorough, but also quick. This doesn't need to take a long time. Get the lower back as well. All right, the next step is gonna be a pre-wax oil. So for oil, a little bit goes a long ways. I'm gonna be using fur oil, just putting a little bit on each cotton round there. Wanna make sure to be really thorough with this as well. Now, after I apply the oil, I'm going to actually remove any excess oil with a dry, clean paper towel. And I get this question a lot. What's the point of adding oil and using oil if you're just gonna wipe it away? So the analogy I like to use is it's kind of like using conditioner in the shower. Even though you're rinsing the conditioner away, you're still feeling the effects of it. So your hair's nice and smooth and soft. Well, same thing with this. The oil is hydrating the skin, it's hydrating the hair, but we don't want it to be able to see any shine left behind on the skin, or else you're gonna have a really hard time getting the wax to properly adhere. So it's still doing its job, still serving its purpose, so make sure to prep with oil. Right, so when I'm doing a back wax, I like to grab some paper towels here and tuck it into the top of their pants, just so that we avoid any wax onto any clothing. If I'm doing like a chest or stomach wax, then I have the client tuck in the paper towel themselves. All right, so first we're going to get started with creating a base strip right here. So I'm gonna go from the top, bring it about halfway, and this will allow room to create our tiger stripes going into that base strip. We will be using a small basic method. If you haven't yet seen that video lesson, make sure to go back and watch that video, or better yet, check out my free 6-week course. It's going to be within week 1. I go over everything you need to know in order to provide an excellent service, including the 6 different types of strips that you need to know. So today we're going to be using tiger stripes and we're using a small basic method. This first one actually is going to be a little bit more of a large basic because I'm creating such a long strip. So I'm going to go ahead and deposit my wax, use really great pressure. Now I've never waxed this client before, so I don't know how well his hair comes out. So I'm going to really thicken up this strip rather than expanding it. And I just want to make sure that his hair removes pretty easily. Is temperature okay? Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. All right, so this is the only point where you're really laying one strip at a time. We just have to give it enough time to set. Now, if you make the lip of your strip too thick and you're not able to remove right away, you can either use kind of this like sugaring method, or I like to just kind of spread that out a little bit. I just noticed that my nail tore through my glove. So instead of switching out gloves mid-service, because your hands start to get kind of clammy, it's really difficult to get a new glove on without using powder, and it can just really slow you down. I like to just throw one right over the top so we can keep on moving. All right, this is ready. I'm gonna get a little lift here. All right, deep breath, one more. So I removed in 2 separate strips just because I wanted to make sure we're not getting stuck and that I'm able to remove that strip all the way through. All right, so now I'm going to do the same thing, but a cleanup strip. So we're going to go in the opposite direction. Again, using a large basic method. So getting a decent amount of wax on my stick there. Going to go ahead and deposit and use lots of pressure. We're going in the opposite direction. Now this hair up top here that you can see, it's a little bit thinner. It looks like it was shaved probably when he got his last haircut or something, or just cleaning up the back of the neck. So I did inform my client beforehand that that hair most likely won't come up. You have to be careful. You can try and see because it's right on edge, but sometimes that can cause irritation if you're waxing hair that's too short, or it can even cause ingrowns as well. So I might avoid that area in general just because I have a feeling that his skin will react and we don't want that. All right, get a little grip here. Now with cleanup strips, you can pull a little bit slower. You want each pull to still be quick, but when you pull a little bit in smaller sections like this, it really helps to tweeze out all those little hairs. All right. So now we're gonna do the same thing, but the base strip up top or down below here so that we have a full base strip to start laying our tiger stripes into. So you can see his hair is growing downwards in a downwards direction. So this strip is going to go down first, and then my cleanup strip will go in the opposite direction. I'm not covering as large of an area, so I didn't need to grab as much wax on my stick, but this area, the hair does tend to be a little bit thicker on the tailbone there. So we do want to make sure we're thickening up our strip. Actually, I'm going to grab even a little bit more wax. So if you ever feel like you didn't make a thick enough strip, it's totally okay to go back. Obviously, grab a new stick. We're never double dipping, but just grab a little bit more wax and go over the top. It's better to be safe than sorry, especially when you're waxing someone for their first time and you're not really sure how well their hair will remove. So this hair up top here is a little bit different than below. Down here it starts to get a little bit thicker, coarser, more deeply rooted. And the hair up top here tends to be a little bit on the thinner side. You can see that his skin is pinking up. This is completely normal though. There's a product that I will put on at the end that's actually new by Relax and Wax called Calm Down, and it will help to prevent any histamine reactions. So histamine reactions are the most common on men's backs, chest, stomach, and then a lot of times for women, it's gonna be like on the face. So I just wanna help prevent against that. All right, got a little lift there. Get a grip, deep breath, one more. Immediate pressure. See how well that was removed. Now you want to make sure that you're checking your strip and getting everything by the root and that we're not breaking any hairs off, because that's going to create issues for our client like 2 to 3 days out from their service. It's really irritating, gets itchy, it can cause a lot of ingrown. So we want to make sure our technique is on and that we're removing that hair from the root.
Quick interruption to the show. I wanted to make sure that you are aware of my free 6-week hard waxing 101 course that I have put out for waxers to gain confidence in the treatment room, no matter where it is in your waxing career that you are at. You will also receive a certificate of completion once you complete the course. So visit us online, lashwaxoc.com, and you will click the training tab. Now back to the show.
Okay, we're gonna go ahead and do a cleanup strip in the opposite direction. This one can be a little bit thinner. I'd create your lip there. Now you'll notice I'm overlapping my strips, or my patterns always overlap with where the previous strip was so that we're not missing any hair. So you can see this is where I laid my first strip, and now this cleanup strip is coming up into that area, just slightly overlapping. All right, we'll remove our cleanup strips when it's still pretty tacky and in these slow motions here. And you can see all those little baby vellus hairs that it removed. And it stays really nice and pliable. So this is a gel-based formula. So if you're newer to waxing, this can be more for our like intermediate to advanced waxers. If you're struggling with the gel-based formula on its own, then you want to grab a bag of cream wax and you can add some to your pot, or we even have 50-50 bags pre-mixed, or you can even opt to use just a cream-based formula on its own as well. All right, now we're gonna get into tiger stripe. So I like to start from the top and work my way down, and I work in opposite. So you can lay anywhere from 1 to 3 strips at a time, depending on the climate of the room, the body temperature of your client, and then also your technique or experience level. So we'll start with 2 at a time, and then we'll see how everything's working for us. It is a little bit warmer in the room today, so sometimes that can slow down the setting time of a gel-based wax. So in that case, you can lay multiple strips at a time. All right, so we're going back to small basic now. I'm gonna start at the shoulder here, deposit, then push up into that base strip. So I kind of widened it a little bit, and then we're gonna come back and thicken it up. So remember, thinner the hair, thinner the strip, thicker the hair, thicker the strip. His is kind of right in between. All right, now I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side, and we kind of wanna offset our strips so that we're not running into one another and it makes removal easy. So I'm not gonna place my strip up here. I'm actually gonna start down here. Deposit, pressure, 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 making sure you're staying on your edge, readjusting as you're coming around the curve here. Thicken that strip up and create your lip. Make sure everything's nice and even, which is for removal. If you have a thick part of your strip and then a thinner part over here, when you go to remove, it's actually gonna rip down that seam that you've created. So we wanna make sure everything's nice and even. All right, and get a little grip here. So this is why I like to bring the strip far onto this base strip here so I can get a really nice grip. Deep breath, one more. And you'll notice I'm using my left hand to hold the skin taut. And now when I tell my client to take a deep breath, I don't actually wait for them to take a deep breath. It's more like distracting to them. By the time they've figured out what I'm telling them to do and they go to take the deep breath, I've already removed the strip. All right, so if you ever get stuck, you can also use the previous strip. You will not use the side that was touching skin. You'll flip it like this, kind of mold that into the lip of the strip right there. All right, deep breath, one more. Make sure you're readjusting too and pulling parallel the entire time. You never want to continue in this motion or else you're gonna lift and can actually cause bruising right here. So make sure you're always staying parallel. That's why I kind of pull into 1, 2. All right, so now we're gonna do the same thing, but opposite. So I'm gonna lay a strip up here and this strip here, and then we'll move into cleanup strip. So you can do one of two things. It depends what works best for you. You can either break it up into 2 separate sections where you're completing the entire upper back first and then moving on to the lower back, or you can complete the entire service with all initial strips and then come back and do the entire back cleanup strips as well. So it's gonna be up to you guys. I've done demos before previously of doing the whole back. So this time I'm going to show you guys what it looks like to separate it from upper back and lower back. You also want to make sure that you're constantly stirring your wax pot. When the lid's off, it can start to cool the wax down a little bit, especially if you have the AC on in your treatment room, which I do not have AC in here yet. All right, good deposit here. One thing to keep in mind too is that you always want to work in the direction that the tip of your stick is pointing. So let me show you what that means in a second. Let me finish this strip. So I'm going to start down here. So I'm working in this direction. If I start my strip here and I widen it this way, you create this seam right in the center. So I'll actually do it the wrong way on the next strip so that you guys can see what that looks like. But it's really important. So being right-handed, for the most part, you're going to be starting on the right, working to the left. If you were left-handed, then you're starting on the left and working your strip to the right. Only when you're doing strips that you're widening rather than just thickening up. All right, get a little grip here. All right, deep breath. One more. Immediate pressure. It's really important to put that pressure. It takes that little sting away. So you can hear my strip still a little tacky, but it's not stringing behind on my glove, so that's when it's ready to remove. Deep breath, one more. And his hair's coming out super, super nicely. All right, so now we're gonna move on to cleanup strip. So we're gonna do the exact same thing, but in the opposite direction and just where it's needed, which we're pretty much gonna cover the exact same areas. There's little tiny vellus hairs in between here. Oh, I remember what I was going to tell you guys. So before starting this demo, my husband offered everyone a drink, and we have some energy drinks in the fridge here in my office. And I told my client to wait until afterwards because caffeine is a stimulant. So if you think about it, you're going to actually feel the discomfort associated with waxing even more than you would without caffeine. So if you have any clients that tend to be a little bit more sensitive, you'll want to tell them to avoid caffeine before their appointment. All right, gonna go ahead and pause it. Going in the opposite direction, using lots of pressure. Also for women, another tip for making the service just a little bit less uncomfortable for your client. For women, we really want to avoid being waxed near our cycle, especially 5 days beforehand and during. That's when you're going to be the most sensitive. So those are the two biggest culprits, is caffeine and menstrual cycle. It's really important too, you're always following a pattern, so it keeps you nice and organized and knowing where to go, where you've been, where you need to go next. Just make sure you're not leaving any hair behind and making this service take even longer than needed. All right, now we're gonna do a cleanup strip up here and on this side as well. You also may want to warn your client, sometimes the cleanup strips can feel a little bit warmer just because the bulk of the hair's gone, some of the dead skin's gone. So they're just really feeling that contact against the skin. If at some point you're not breaking sticks, you're not using enough pressure. I see a lot of videos online of newer waxers laying their strips, and you want to use a lot of pressure because what that does is it's pushing the wax down to the base of the hair rather than superficially just sitting on top. So when you go to remove, you're pulling from the root rather than if it's up top here, and especially if their hair is very dehydrated, then it can snap and break instead of being broken or pulled from the root. So they're not going to have as long lasting results, and it can even cause some ingrowns and redness and irritation. So we really want to avoid that. So pressure, pressure, pressure. You will hear me say that on repeat in all my videos. All right, so let me show you guys how not to lay a strip. So if me being right-handed, I work from the right to left, but if I were to work from the left to the right, this is what ends up happening. See how you create that big seam in the middle there? So we don't want that, because then what happens when you go to remove that, it's gonna rip right down the middle. So really important that you're working in the direction that the tip of your stick is pointing, or again, if you're right-handed, from right to left. But that doesn't always line up because depending where it is that you're waxing, sometimes instead of doing a push away from you motion, you're doing a pull towards you, or maybe you're going in this direction. So that's the easiest way to remember. It's just the tip of the stick. You're working in that direction. Get a little grip here. So this is why I like to lay past the hairline so I can do that and get that grip without tugging on any little hairs for my client. Gives that a little bit longer to set. So it's starting to get a little warm in this room. So when that happens, the gel-based formula can feel like it's taking a little bit longer to set. So what you would do is either just allow a little bit more time before removing. You can go ahead and apply more strips at a time, or you can add a little bit of cream wax to the gel and it's going to help with the setting time. All right, so rule of thumb when you're waxing from the décolleté down is with hard waxes, you can lay a strip up to 3 times, go over an area up to 3 times. So I am actually going to do a third cleanup strip right just in this area where some hairs have been missed. But again, that's rule of thumb. So you really want to examine your client's skin and make sure that they can handle it. His is a little pink and red, but nothing abnormal. His skin can definitely handle it. I don't see any, he's not like breaking out in hives. He doesn't have a histamine reaction starting. It's not like shiny. You want to look for shine because that equals lifting, and then you stop the service immediately. So I'm not seeing anything that's like alarming. The pink is completely normal. Everyone's skin reacts a little bit different. So we're just going to cover this area right here, and we're going to go back into the original direction that we were going. You can even kind of go sideways too. So let me show you what that looks like. So we went this way, then we went this way. So you can go back in this direction, or you can even come upward. So we're hitting a completely new direction. I like to remove these ones when it's super tacky, so it can be kind of hard to get a little lift here. So you can use the tip of your stick like this and just do small sections. Doesn't look the prettiest, but it can be super effective. And we got little guys in there. Right, same thing other side. So when you're getting a grip, a lot of times I see people doing this. You want to like come right to the edge of the strip and then give a quick little flick. That's how you get that lift with your stick. All right, now we're going to move on to like mid and lower back. So we're going to repeat the same process. Go ahead and pause it. It's good pressure staying on your edge as you come around the curve here. Super important. You don't want to butter. Create that lip. And make sure everything is nice and even. I'm actually gonna do the same area and just make sure that my lip, they're far enough apart that I can get a good little grip there. Pressure, pressure, pressure. So when doing this side, you'll notice I'm not walking to the other side of the treatment table because it just adds so much more time to the service. I really like to always be on the left side over here unless like super needed, which normally is only maybe an underarm or eyebrow wax. So I like to stay on this side. It just shortens up the service. But if you are having a hard time reaching, I would just like really go on your toes, or worst case, you can go to the other side of the treatment table, or even lower your bed slightly when you're doing a back service. Or treatment table, I should say. So good. Most important thing if you do use this technique is that you're molding all that, the lip of the strip into that other strip. Breath, more. All right. Okay, I'm gonna do my cleanup strips right away on this one. So I'm actually kind of separating it in 3 different sections. Upper, mid, and lower. All right, so this one's gonna go in the opposite direction. It may feel a little bit warmer. For some reason on the sides here, it's a little bit more sensitive too than the upper back. So just make sure you warn your client so that they're not internally freaking out and thinking that they're being burnt. So if it's like if your client's really struggling with the heat, you can always turn it down slightly or pull from the middle of your pot. So stop stirring as much and just pull from that middle section, because the heating mechanism is around the outside and from the bottom up. So the wax in the middle starts to cool down. So you can do that, but you still need to make sure it's the right consistency so that we're getting nice effective strips. But you can use just a tiny bit cooler wax on the cleanup strips if needed. All right, same thing on the other side. If you guys are new to waxing too, you'll want to get down the whole motion of spinning and twirling your stick as you're walking from your pot to the client to make sure you're keeping all the wax on your stick and not dripping. So one things you can do when at home is just have a couple sticks on hand and just literally while you're watching TV, let me grab a clean one without wax. But while you're watching TV, you'll just sit there and just do this motion until it becomes second nature. This needs to be second nature. So you can twirl towards you or choose to twirl away from you. You can see I'm much slower in that direction. So I really like twirling towards me. So I'm kind of like using my thumb and my index finger, if you can see that motion. So it just takes some practice, but make sure you're practicing that at home. Got a little grip here. Now, if you have any pieces left behind like this, I would take my strip and put it over the top and remove that. Or if you're gonna be waxing over that area anyways, it's not the biggest deal because that next strip will remove that. But let me show you what you kind of do. Use your finger, kind of heat it up, mold it, and then it should come off. Also, worst case, you can pull in the opposite direction and it normally comes off fairly easily, but it's not necessarily going to remove hair. Normally for something like that, I would have just left it and laid my next strip right over top. All right, moving on to lower back. This is where it definitely, the temperature feels much warmer on the lower back. So I am pulling from the middle. I turn my wax pot down just slightly and I won't be stirring it quite as much so I can pull from the center a little bit cooler wax. It's really important too that you always test your wax on your inner arm before you get started so that you know it's at the right temperature. And then if your client's really, really struggling with the heat, then you want to ask a few questions. Did you have a lot of caffeine this morning? Are you near your menstrual cycle? There can be certain medications and stuff too, but usually the culprit is always caffeine. So make sure that's something that for new clients, it's on your new intake form. Make sure to inform them about that so that they can have the best possible experience, especially for the first time. Because when people have a bad first experience, it affects all of us, because then they a lot of times swear off waxing forever, and we don't want that. So we want to make sure we're giving them a really great service. And part of that is properly prepping your client as well. All right, gonna do cleanup. So you want to make sure you're always on your edge, whether it's this side edge or even the tip of your stick. But super important, you're always on an edge. So you can position however is more comfortable for you. So as we get down to the side here and the lower back, it feels like you have kind of a smaller space to work with. So my side edge isn't working quite as well for me. So I kind of come up on my tip or even the side like this, as long as you're on any part of the edge of your stick. We just don't want to butter, because again, that's when you create those superficial strips that are just laying on top of the hair and it can cause breakage. All right, little grip. Notice how I'm always making sure I'm pulling the skin taut and readjusting. You don't want to keep pulling taut from here when now you're on this portion of the strip. You want to readjust. All right, now moving to the bottom. So one of the issues you can run into when doing this part of the back is that you're kind of like in your own way. So this is one of the times when I potentially will walk to the other side of the treatment table so that my hand and my arm isn't in my way and I can make sure I'm staying on my edge. So let me show you what that would look like. Or first, let me show you kind of using more of a painter tool method so I can get close to the pants here, but I'm not like in my way. So if I was trying to be on my side edge, it just wouldn't work well for me. But using the tip like this, which is like painter tool method, then you can get real close and in there without getting in the way. If you're having a hard time and you're still really learning to control your wax and using all these different types of strips, then you definitely can walk to the other side of the treatment table. So if you did that, let me show you what that looks like. So you want to move quickly, make sure you're spinning and twirling your stick, but see how now my hand isn't in, like I'm not running into his pants here and having a hard time staying on my edge. So you could pick what works best for you. Personally, I really try to avoid coming to the other side of the treatment table. If your goal is speed, then little things like this really add up and can make the service just take a lot longer than needed. All right, get a little grip here. This hair too can be a little bit thicker down here and it can be a little bit more of a sensitive area of the back. So we do want to remove that fairly quickly. And don't forget the pressure afterwards. So I was asked so much on one of my videos on YouTube Shorts about why do I add pressure? So when you apply pressure afterwards, it kind of takes away a little bit of that sting. So it just makes it more comfortable for your client. Then you're just getting that quick initial like sting when you first remove the strip, but as soon as you put pressure, it kind of like dulls that out. So it's really important to apply pressure. That's one of the compliments I've always gotten is how much less, I hate using the word pain, but how much less discomfort there is associated with my waxing. And it's really because of applying that pressure. It helps a lot. All right, now we're just gonna do a little cleanup strip over here. It's gonna feel much warmer, I apologize. We're almost done. Now, if you've already been over an area 3 times and there's still some hair left behind, then you really want to inform your client about proper prep at home, also consistency of waxing, because a lot of times it's due to not exfoliating enough or can be a number of different things. Usually exfoliation is the culprit. So if you know you're using proper technique and there's still hairs left behind after that 3rd pass, then you can either choose to use soft wax next time, or and with soft wax, you go over it once, and then if there's any hair left after that, you need to do cleanup strips with hard wax. Soft wax, you can only go over an area once. So either that, or you'll just inform your client about proper home care and prep, and the next service should be much easier. Especially consistency, staying consistent, it's really important. All right, I am gonna make an attempt to clean this area up one more time. If it doesn't come up in that, then I'm not gonna go over the area again. I don't wanna cause too much irritation. Also, if you see any of like the little pinpoint bleeding, that's totally normal. That means those hairs have been removed from the root, or those could have even been little like blackheads or ingrowns that actually were removed. So if it's surface ingrowns, a lot of times especially with our gel-based formula, the wax can actually remove some of those ingrowns on its own. I'll use this wax as like a Bior strip. I'll wax the top of my nose and it feels so good, and it's crazy what it will pick up the tackiness of this wax is something I know it can take a little bit to get used to, but you really want to embrace it because that's what gives such a great solid grip and is the reason why we're able to reduce the amount of cleanup strips that are needed. It worked perfect. All right, I have a few different options for you guys to end the service. So this is from Just the Strip, and this is their plain Jane. So this can be equivalent to fur oil, but it's going to be much less expensive. So I love this product line. It's for professionals only. They're fantastic. They're actually based here in Oregon too, which is super cool. So this is something I would use if it was just like a normal service, no irritation, just need some hydration afterwards and some preventative against ingrowns. This is what I would use. All right, next up is called No Trauma Mama by Relax and Wax. This I keep on hand for any sensitive areas and any like extreme irritation. So a lot of times facial waxing, I'll use this, maybe bikini if they're really red and irritated. Underarms, another area I commonly use this, but this doesn't spread really well. So I tend to avoid it for larger areas like the back, unless they're really irritated, then I will use this. It's super calming and soothing. So this is a great one to have on hand. Also, if you accidentally lift someone's skin, this is what I would apply immediately after. All right, and then last up we have, this is a newer product from Relax and Wax. It's called Calm Down. And this is actually a topical antihistamine. So the back is somewhere that people can tend to have a histamine reaction. Normally you would kind of start to see signs of it during the service, but sometimes it pops up like 30 minutes to an hour after the service, and then your clients are calling you freaking out. So I've had a lot of clients in the past who have histamine reactions, but they still wanted to get waxed. So there's a few things that you can do to help at least minimize the amount of the reaction that they're having. So taking an antihistamine orally 30 to 45 minutes before their service, so something like a Claritin, that can be really helpful. And then ending the service with this, you're kind of like, you're attacking it from the inside out and outside in. This can really help. So those two things, plus there's some add-on services you can do, high frequency, a hydrogelling mask, their calming aftercare one, things like that can really help as well. Also ice rollers. So there's a few things to keep in mind when it comes to histamine reactions. Now, I don't see that with him, but just because I know it can be pretty common on back, especially him being a new client to me, I am going to go ahead and use this. Right? So you just spread this on. See over here, you can kind of see a little bit of irritation, and that's where the hair was a little bit thicker, so it makes sense. All right, and then you want to instruct your client too to wear any like loose clothing. So a cotton t-shirt's going to be best. We want to avoid sweating. So no like steam rooms, saunas, working out for 24 hours. Also, it's ideal if once he goes home, he takes a nice cold shower or at least runs cold water over the area that we just waxed, because it helps contract the pores and it can minimize the potential for any breakouts and further irritation as well. So, all right, thank you guys so much for watching. If this was helpful, I would love if you could share it with another ST friend that can find it helpful as well. Make sure to turn on notifications, subscribe, and I will see you back next week.